I have a saying, you only get out of it what you put into it, and it's been real good. I'm glad that it took form and we got this far, and I'm grateful to the Menger staff who were just absolutely fantastic to work with. And now Kaylee is going to give us a talk on the history of this building that we're in. So, Kaylee Steiner, I'm giving it to you, and you'll have to talk up a little because Fred's batteries are
I will do my best. All right, I will do my best to speak up. I'm coming down with a little bit of a cold. One of the children brought home something from school, as always. So I will speak as loud as I can right now. So I'm gonna go over the entire 164 years of the Menger Hotel in about 15-20 minutes. So if you have questions at any point, please raise your hand, stop me. I absolutely love questions, and I will answer it to the best of my abilities. So let me welcome you to the Menger Hotel. The room you guys are in right now is actually the oldest meeting room in the entire building. This room was here on opening day, February 1st, 1859. So the balcony that we actually have outside was kind of the forefront picturesque balcony on the day that we opened. The second floor here was the top floor of the hotel. So I'll later on go over all of the kind of extensions that we put on over the years, but you are in the oldest room in this hotel right now. So we have the original crown molding ceilings and the original floors that have been redone several times to keep them kind of as fresh and as new as we can get them to look. So, as I said before, the Menger opened on February 1st of 1859, and it was actually originally a boarding house and a brewery. So the owner of the brewery, Mr. Menger, met his wife, Mary, who was the owner of the boarding house where he lived. And they both had such profitable businesses, they decided, why don't we combine them together and actually build a hotel? And they actually built the oldest hotel west of the Mississippi. And we still kind of own that moniker. We are the oldest one, the west of the Mississippi. So they ended up continuing their brewery services until about the early 1900s. But down in our basement, there's a lot of kind of spooky closed down tunnels where they would actually keep all of the beer to keep it as cold as they could deep underground. So they were running a full 50-room hotel at the same time as running their brewery, which is where we kind of got our bar from. So William unfortunately passed away in 1871, but his wife decided, I love what I'm doing. She ran the entire kitchen and dining room services and the front desk, so she decided, let's just keep going without him. So she actually published something in the newspaper the week he passed away, stating, the loss of my husband is very unfortunate, but that's not going to do anything to our hotel. We are going to keep our business running and keep it just as high quality as it always has been. So they ended up continuing the business until Miss Mary was almost in her 90s. And she finally decided, this is too much for me now at this point. I need to relinquish this to someone else. But her son, Louis, turned down ownership and told her, I don't want to run the hotel. I don't like it. So they ended up actually selling it to our original contractor, Mr. J.H. Campman, for $118,000, which in today's money would be about $3.5 million. And that was just our original 50-room block with this room here, and then that main lobby outside this room over there. So he decided, I need to renovate this place as soon as he was able to get hold of it. And since he was the original contractor, he knew exactly what the hotel needed and all the updates that he needed to give it. So I don't know if anybody is staying on our historical side, which is this side of the hotel. So if your room has like a, a 2-0, a 3-0, you might have noticed there's a step up to go into your bathroom. That's because when we were built, plumbing did not exist. So he actually helped get all that plumbing installed. So that's why all of our original rooms have just that slight step to get up in there. That was the first major project that he went about, was getting our plumbing installed and getting some slightly better lighting than just candle lights down our hallways, so it's a little bit easier for people to see. He also kind of expanded outward and did that first expansion block of rooms, which is another 50-room block, which goes that direction. So if you're walking down that hallway, you can actually feel those original wooden floors underneath the carpet. If you're going down this way, you can kind of hear it creaking along with you as you go. So once Mr. Campman took over his ownership and he started his renovations, he actually owned the hotel for 62 years. And he kept continuing those renovations over time. He added the east wing, as I had said. He actually relocated the kitchen from its original place to where it is now. So we're still in the exact same kitchen area. We've just done a lot of upgrades to that since the 1800s. Our second lobby over this way was actually added on. So the one that's over this balcony here used to be the original lobby, and then we transitioned over to this side where we are now. And it also kind of contributed to the resurgence of the hotel's popularity, because during the Civil War and World War I, we actually shut down and became a military hospital, which could also be part of the ghost, entirely possible. And the original people who built this hotel actually purchased the property from the Alamo. It was about 22 years after the Battle of the Alamo that we bought that property to build this hotel. So the Battle of the Alamo happened under our feet, which is also probably ghosts. So if you see anybody in any kind of military uniform, see if you can figure out which war they are. So Campman is also credited with the construction of our main Menger bar that we have over on the far side of the hotel. The really cool part about that bar is it originally used to be on this side of the hotel. And they decided about 20 to 30 years into having it that kind of this passageway over here, there was nothing on this side of the hotel. Now we have the River Center Mall there, but back then it was just an empty field. The other side was the Alamo. Everybody was coming to see the Alamo, so they completely dismantled the entire bar, piece by piece, and reassembled it on the other side of the hotel where it sits now. So I was actually talking to our bartender today, because we've been having some slight issues with the chairs that we have in there. And I was asking her, why are we having so many issues with, they're just wooden chairs, like what's wrong with them? It's because they were put in the bar in 1920, when the bar was moved over to the other side of the hotel. So if you have gone in the bar and sat in those wooden chairs that we have down on that first floor, they have been there since 1920. So they're a little rickety. We're working on it. We're trying not to get rid of them if we don't have to.
Don't replace them. You still need to have the original.
You're trying our best.
Give you some of Jock's glue.
So the bar was actually modeled after the House of Lords in London. I don't know if anybody has heard of that incredibly famous bar, but that's kind of what we modeled it after. So that's why it has the cherry wood. If you go in right into the door and look up, there's a full-size moose head in there that we actually modeled after the one they have at the House of Lords in London. And kind of the thing the bar is most famous for, you might have heard of, was President Teddy Roosevelt recruited his Rough Rider army inside that bar. Now I'm gonna tell you a little tidbit about it, but our Teddy Roosevelt impersonator hates when I tell people this, because he tells me it's a lie. But I've seen it in so much text, and he's the only person who's told me it's not true, so I don't know. I'm gonna tell you it could be fake, it could be real, but we're gonna still share the message anyway. So it's rumored that he would kind of start feeding the individuals in that bar just a little bit more alcohol than they could handle, until they got to the point where they would say yes to just about anything. And then he would give them the paperwork that they needed to sign their life away to the army. And when they would wake up the next morning, they were part of the army. And they didn't really have a whole lot of choice in the matter. I don't know if anybody has been over kind of outside the Menger bar where the catering office is, but there is a full case out there of actual Rough Rider uniforms that we've purchased and commandeered over the years. All of this stuff that's in there, the weapons, the saddles, everything was actually used in that fight in Cuba. So we've been able to get a lot of the stuff. There's also a case like that in the bar, so definitely check those out. They're very, very cool. And there's a lot of little plaques on there that tells you kind of what everything cost at that time period. I know the saddle that they have in there was under $3 for the entire saddle and all the equipment that they needed for each horse. So it was pretty relatively well priced if you ask me. So we're gonna transition over to our next owner, who is still our current owner, actually. So in the entire 164 years of the Menger Hotel, we've only had 3 owners the entire time.
Wow.
So we had Mr. Menger at the beginning, who sold it to Mr. Campman, the original contractor, who sold it to Mr. Lewis in 1943, and he is still the current owner. He is 97 years old. He still works at our corporate office every day. He actually spoke to my general manager yesterday, and he came in to let me know kind of all the new procedures that we're gonna work with to improve a couple little things here and there. But he is still the current owner. He has put measures in place for that when he does pass away, it will move on to his daughter. So we'll have our 4th owner, but still in the 3rd family of the owners. So it's pretty cool how long we've been in just those 3 families. The Moody family, who are the current owners with Mr. Lewis, actually own 12 different hotels all over the United States. We're part of the 1859 Historical Hotels Association. So if you've been at the Crockett next door, we own them as well. If you've been to the Brown Hotel, if you've been down into Galveston, we have several hotels down there. We have one in Pikes Peak, Colorado. So we're kind of all over the place, but us and the Crockett are both owned by the same company. So a lot of the staff that works here also works there. So my office is in the Menger, but I also work at the Crockett. So depends on the person you're talking to, but they probably work at both hotels. So after Mr. Campman sold the hotel off to the Moody family, 1948, a few years after they purchased the hotel, they went in for the biggest renovation we've had over the entire 164 years. So they did a complete overhaul of everything in the entire hotel. They refurbished all original 50 rooms so that they could stay in operation. They updated all of the air conditioning systems, which are still some of the ones that we have today. So they've been in operation that entire time. Our hotel is on a 2-pipe system. So we either have the heat running or the cold running. There's no in between. So it's the original system that we have. It is unfortunately or fortunately gonna be redone this coming March, and they're redoing the air conditioning in the entire hotel. Can't tell you how much it costs, but it's a lot. A lot. After he did that full renovation on all of the air conditioning systems and the new blocks, they added in the swimming pool that we have now. They did a full renovation of this lobby we have over here, and then actually fully revamped this one over here. So the original main lobby we have outside of this room was kind of a dark brown mahogany color, relatively similar to this podium that I have in front of me. And now it's those kind of bright marble columns, the white paint, that kind of blue robin wallpaper that we have out there. That was courtesy of Mr. Lewis. All of the renovations were actually in anticipation of the 1968 World's Fair. So that's where we get the Tower of Americas from. That's kind of up the street around the corner a little bit. We did those renovations in anticipation of that coming into town, and we were sold out almost a year in advance. So they had to get those renovations done because all of those people needed somewhere to stay. His next renovation process that he did was in 1991. It was kind of the last major renovation that we've had in all of our years. That was adding all of our gift shops that we have downstairs at the front of the hotel. So if you've gone to the Menger gift shop or any of our little stores that we have, those were all put in 1991. I want to go over the famous guests just a little bit, and then I'm going to get into a few little ghost things, nothing too crazy, just a few little ghost stories that we have from the area. So we've seen obviously a lot of very famous people over 164 years. The most famous person I've personally met is the lead singer of Twisted Sister. I sent a picture to my dad, and he said it was the best day of his life. Even though he has 3 daughters. We've also had 13 presidents stay with us over all of our years. The most recent one was a little bit of a time ago, but it was Bill Clinton, was the most recent one that we've had. The wife of our current governor loves staying at the Menger. Anytime she's in San Antonio, she chooses to stay here. We don't know if she was here until after she's already left, because her security is very, very strict. So they let us know as she's checking out, hey, the governor's wife was here for like the last 6 already on. We've also had a lot of military generals like Sam Houston and Robert E. Lee, and a lot of really cool public figures. I don't know if anybody has seen the room that's down this hallway, but we do have the Oscar Wilde suite. He wrote a lot of his famous works inside of our hotel, which is one of my favorite little pieces of trivia. And there's no physical proof that she has been inside of our building, but she has seen it from the street because she was at the Alamo. But Queen Elizabeth actually came to visit San Antonio in the 90s and did a full comprehensive tour of the Alamo. She had to walk by Menger when she was here. I mean, we're right next to each other. She walked by the Menger to go down to the Riverwalk and actually rode one of our riverboat tours down the river so that everybody could see the Queen. So she has seen the hotel, but I don't know if she's been inside it. We were actually added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1976, and we're currently a member of the Historical Hotels of America. So there's a lot of things being a part of those two organizations that we are restricted of doing to the hotel itself. We have to keep our original facade or we'll lose all of those accommodations because we have to stay as original to our building as we possibly can. So you might see down in our main or Victorian lobbies, maybe there's some cracking in the tile or there's some spots where you're like, why do they keep it like that? We legally have to, or we will be removed from all of the national registers that we are on currently. So even just main renovations, like one of our meeting rooms, we just recently painted it white. It took 6 months to get approval to be able to do that. It was originally neon yellow, and we really needed to make some changes, and it took a very, very long time to get approval from all different kinds of people just to paint it white. So working at a historical hotel is incredibly fun, and it's very rewarding, but there's a lot of little red tape things that you would never think about that you have to go through every day. So one of those, I guess, would be the ghost. That's not a thing we really anticipate at your place of employment, that you're gonna be dealing with ghosts, throwing pens off your desk and knocking on the walls of your office when you're trying to have a conference call. Our two main ghosts, actually we'll go over 3 of them, because we're in one of the special rooms associated to one of them. So the suite that's right next to us is the King Suite. I don't know if anybody's heard of the King Ranch in Texas. The original owner, Mr. Richard King, stayed here anytime he possibly could. So the suite that's next to us was his private suite. He paid for it year-round, and we were not allowed to rent it out to any other people, just him or his family members. So anytime he was in town, he always had somewhere secure and safe to stay. He could send people to stay in his suite, but the room on the other side of us was his guest suite. So this whole block right here, he paid for year-round, because we're in his original meeting room as well. So this is where he would meet with people when he was making sales for his cattle. There's actually a very cool story about our Alamo Plaza. The very first time barbed wire was presented to the world was inside that plaza downstairs. And that's where the very first sale of barbed wire took place. There's a really cool plaque on the front of the hotel that talks all about the intricacies and details of everything. But a lot of that stuff was sold in this room, where Mr. King would hold his private meetings. And the reason that he haunts this place is he actually passed away in that room. So when he was getting a little bit more up in age, he was unfortunately diagnosed with stomach cancer. And in the 1800s, there really wasn't anything they could do for him at that point. So he decided he was going to come to San Antonio, to his favorite place, because all of his doctors were here. And they would just take care of him until he passed. So he passed away in that suite right there. The main thing we hear from people is he just doesn't want them in there because that's his room. Why do we have random people sleeping in his bed? Because it is still the same bed frame. They've of course replaced the mattress and all that stuff because that's gross. But it is still the same bed frame, and it's still a lot of the original furniture that we had in there as well. Because the really fun thing about Mr. King was he was 5'1". So he was even smaller than I am. And a lot of his furniture in his room was built very, very small. So that when he was sitting on his chair or his chaise lounge, he looked larger and more imposing when he was having meetings. That was also the rumor behind why he had his beard was down to here. just long beard, because it made him look longer if he had that longer facial hair. But he was about my height, if not a little bit smaller. So a lot of the furniture in there is really tiny. The chair that is in the bedroom is so small, it's hard for me to sit in. And I'm just barely taller than he was. So it's one of my favorite rooms in the hotel. He does like to come in this room a lot and mess with our glasses. The main issue we've had is one of our actual registered ghost stories of the hotel is some of my staff was setting up an event. This was probably about 10 years ago, back before I was ever here. They were setting up a table over on that far wall, and they were doing stacks of glasses for presenting for champagne. They shut the door and they were walking away, and they started to hear glasses shattering on the hardwood floor. So they threw the door open because they thought, oh my God, the table collapsed, like something must be going on. And they watched the glasses one by one falling off in a row from the table. So they slammed the door, ran off because they're not dealing with that. Who wants to argue with a ghost about wine glasses? So they ran downstairs, grabbed their boss, brought them upstairs. The boss didn't 100% believe them because it's easy to blame a mistake on a ghost, but they were adamant until they left their job here that that is exactly what happened. The ghosts were bullying them and knocking down all of their stacks of glasses as soon as they had finished. Our next most famous ghost in the hotel is Miss Sally White. She's actually a housekeeper who worked here back in the late 1800s. Unfortunately, Miss Sally was married to a pretty terrible man. They had a very tumultuous marriage, and he was very jealous of the fact that everybody at the Menger loved Miss Sally. She was the most beloved employee that they had here. Everyone adored her. She lived about 2 blocks up the street. They would stop by her house on the way home just to say hi to her. And unfortunately, one morning, it got to him a little bit too much, and he ended up shooting Miss Sally. But since she was so close to the hotel, she ran over here, injured, collapsed in our lobby downstairs below us, and Miss Menger actually carried her upstairs to the 2nd floor and hid her in one of the rooms so that her husband could not find her. And she ended up passing away in that room about 2 days later. So the hotel actually paid for her funeral. It was a whopping $32. We still have the receipt downstairs. So those glass cases that we have in our main lobby, they're full of a lot of memorabilia. The receipt for Miss Sally's funeral is actually in one of those cases still. We had her funeral down in that main lobby downstairs. We also had Mr. King's funeral down in that main lobby. I believe over time we've hosted about 9 to 10 funerals on this property. Employees are very favored guests who have passed away here. The last ghost that we have is probably the most known, President Roosevelt. So my office is in just the most unfortunate spot it could be in. I am directly across the hall from the bar, and I am directly underneath the Teddy Roosevelt suite. So he is all over the place all the time around me. The main thing that they do see in the bar, and there is actually photographic evidence online if you're kind of bored later and want to go check it out. One of our closing bartenders was getting everything locked up. It was about 2 or 3 in the morning, and he was completely alone in the bar, had all 3 doors locked up, and was kind of finishing up, getting everything clean. And he turned around to look at the bar from the 2nd floor, and he saw a man sitting at the bar. The man had a large kind of round hat on, a long woolen cloak, and he was sipping on something, but he couldn't really tell what he was sipping on because he didn't serve him, so he didn't know where he got it from. And across from our bar is actually this huge mirror that if you're on the 2nd floor, you can see everyone sitting on the 1st floor underneath it. He looked up in that mirror and didn't see anybody sitting there. So he whipped his phone out and took a quick picture and actually posted it online. And you can see an image of a man sitting at the bar with his cloak and his hat, but no reflection in the mirror in front of him. But you can see the bartender up on that 2nd floor. So the mirror gets some kind of image, but not the one that he was assuming he would see. The thing that I deal with President Roosevelt rather often, since his suite is above me, And that section of the hotel where my office is isn't super well insulated from sound because it is rather old. That one was built in about the 1920s. I can hear everything that happens in that suite above me. And it was probably my second week working here. I had never been in my office by myself before. I had just really been with my boss, kind of shadowing her. And she was out sick, so I was running everything for the first time alone. And I could hear a ton of movement upstairs. There was arguing, cursing. It sounded like they were sliding the chairs across the marble floor and pushing things all over the room. And I panicked because it's like, I gotta tell somebody, like something's going on up there and there's something bad happening. So I ran to the front desk and went to go ask my friend Stephanie, like, hey, I need you to call security, send somebody up to the Teddy, I don't know what's going on. Fun fact about Stephanie, she used to sit at my desk before I sat at my desk. And she said, oh, honey, you finally heard it. The ghosts are welcoming you. I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Because when I started here, I did not believe in ghosts. I thought that was the biggest lie I had ever heard. And she said, no, I promise you, you're gonna hear that more than once a week for the rest of the time that you work here. She said, sometimes it's real people, sometimes it's not. More often it's not. And I looked at her and was like, I don't believe you. Like, you are lying to me because you think it's funny, because I'm the new girl and I don't know anything about the hotel yet. So I reached over and picked up her radio and I radioed for our security. I said, hey, please meet me at the Teddy. There's something bad happening in there right now. I need you to go up there with me. So I ran upstairs, met security outside, and he said, I don't know why you have me up here. Like, there's not gonna be anything in there. I looked at our little register they have. No one's in the room right now. It's vacant, it has been for a couple days. I was like, I do not believe you. You have to let me in here so I can see it for myself. He swung the door open for me, all the lights were out. You could smell in the room that housekeeping had not been in there yet because you could normally smell the cleaners and the fresh sheets. No one had been in there for a couple days. It was still messy from the last people that had stayed there because they hadn't flipped the room yet, and no one was in there. I went back downstairs knowing like everything was locked back up, no one was in there, and I could still hear all of the yelling and arguing, chairs moving around the floor. And that happens probably twice a week, I'd say. It's a very interesting office to be in because I'm right across from our haunted bar, and one of our more haunted suites is right above my head. So it's...
Your pens. Your pens.
You said your pens block
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, it's not as terrifying as it sounds, I guess. But the main thing that happens physically inside my office is they will throw the pens across the office when I'm reaching for it to do something. So I have a huge cup of pens on my desk because it's kind of inconvenient when you're on the phone with someone trying to write down their information and your phone, like your pen flies across the desk. So I just pick up another one and just keep going. It used to bother me quite a lot, and I was really freaked out about being in here at night, but our ghosts aren't malicious. They might pick on you a little bit, move your stuff around, you know, make all the toilets in the bathroom flush at the same time when you're trying to do your makeup. But they're not here to be malicious. They're just, you're in their place and they want to bother you a little bit. So, do I have any questions from anybody about anything? Even if it's the craziest, yes, sir.
What is all going out front here and in front of the Alamo? What is being built? What's the plan for out
So they're
there?
basically doing kind of like an open garden concept space outside. So I don't know if you've seen the signs that we have kind of all around our lobby, those big foam boards. Those are photos of what they're projecting it to look like. So there's gonna be the big gazebo, the grass, one of the trees right here. They actually dug up that tree and moved it and replanted it, and they're going to do that the second time to move it back where they need it to go. So they're trying to kind of make this more of a good public area to sit. It's gonna have the grass, the gazebos, and then they did add some new barracks of the Alamo right directly across from it. So anything that's directly across the street from the Alamo is all brand new construction. So all the barracks and stuff that they have there just opened a few months ago, as well as on the Alamo property, they have their new collections museum. Highly recommend going. It's free entry. You can walk in at any time through the back gates of the Alamo into the collection center. I got to do a private tour of it about a week before it opened, and they have some stuff in that museum that they have never put on public display before. So it's a lot of very cool things. The main issue we're having with the construction out here is this is hallowed ground. So if they find anything even mildly suspicious, they're required to stop construction for about 5 days while they investigate that spot. So this construction's been happening for probably 3 or 4 years already. And it's expanding more coming up this next week, but they're finally starting to make progress because they finally kind of stopped running into random artifacts buried underneath the dirt. So hopefully it stays that way, but you never know what they'll find. Anyone else want to ask their questions? Yes, sir.
Happy Halloween, nice story.
Well, you know, the story behind the story of Kaylee being here tonight was we were trying to get a guest speaker for tonight, and we were having a problem, and somebody said to me, why, the hotel is so steeped in history, why don't you see if someone on staff can come and talk about the Menger, the history of it? So I went to Stacy Peak, the sales manager, and she said, got just the person. Got just the person.
Yeah. I have people ask me all the time where they put a 27-year-old in charge of all of the history of the hotel. I minored in history in college, and that was my only qualification.
Well, we've done a little history, and we found out that you have a favorite restaurant,
Yes, sir, I do.
and I think it's called the Texas Roadhouse.
My mother and I go every Saturday.
Well, on your next trip, enjoy.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Taylor.
Appreciate it.